We're going to touch on now some very basic pump maintenance, regular maintenance that has to be done all the time. Used bath mat. Get a bath mat. Makes a great thing to kneel on. I need to take off. I'm going to grease my pump, so I need to take this off to access my grease zerk over here. We're going to take this off so I can show you the Lovejoy connector between the motor. This is a 30 horse. Here's my Viking gear drive, gear reducer. This is to drain the oil out of. It comes from the factory with just a 3/8 inch pipe plug inside there. In order to prevent this from making a mess like it did the first time, I just diverted it off with a rubber hose, so I can just put a pan under here, open this up. The original vent that came here was a mushroom cap vent like you would see on an older car pickup truck differential, the kind where you could spin the top around. Made just a hell of a lot of noise the whole time while the pumps were running, so I didn't like it. They frosted over. If you got a serious enough frost or ice storm, they would cover over. So I pulled it and I just put a 3/4 inch regulator vent on here, raised it up. It's been absolutely fully 100% trouble free. So when you go to put the oil in, you pull this out, and this is where you pour the oil in at. Here's your oil level. You pull that out, and as you're refilling it, as soon as oil starts running out of here, that's when you know you're full, and you put that 1/8 inch pipe plug back in. It requires, I think, either 34 or 36 ounces of oil. We use a synthetic. It's either 10W30 or 5W30, and I always add 4 ounces of motor coat. Ever since I've started adding motor coat, these things have run just so much quieter and smoother, having that extra lubricity inside there. It's been well worth it, and I've never stopped using motor coat. Here you can see I mentioned earlier about my inlet and outlet pressure gauges. So there I got my snubber, needle valve, I got my gauge, and so these things tell me a great deal about what my pumps are doing. And then up above this, I got a sight glass with a back check valve. That's to prevent when these pumps shut down and there's that big pressure difference from them running all full bore to nothing. I don't want these pumps to backspin. So the back check valve will instantly close, prevent back pressure from going in here and causing any damage to my pumps. So we will remove these just to show you the Lovejoys. There's a typical Lovejoy connector. This filler piece in here is called a Hydral Spider. They come as either white or black. The white has the higher impact rating, and that's all we run are white. In order to get this motor, this gear drive, and this pump to get all their drives to line up, Corken uses shims. And so when they leave the factory, all 3 of these are mounted onto this base, and they're all true to each other. This way and this way, they're true to each other, so that everything lines up and turns evenly and smoothly. When you're out in the field, from shipping and you hooking up the piping and everything else, it's pretty easy, pretty common to get this pump, even though it's bolted down, you don't mess with the bolts, it's still easy for that thing to get a little bit clocked one way or another. So it's really important to, when you start before you actually get going in your initial startup, is to prove that these are square. And best way I found out to do a Lovejoy is you make sure you measure this in 3 places, like 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6, or whatever, 3 o'clock, what the hell ever. 3 spaces in here, 3 different points. Make sure it's even. And then you take a a square, like a little 6-inch quick square, or a phone. If your phone has a flat edge, you put it on here, and you measure it in 3 different spots to make sure that this Lovejoy, both these ends, are as square as they can possibly be. And always, always, always anti-seize your shafts here. And these here, pull the set screws out and anti-seize them as well. Because the last thing you want is that sucker to get seized up inside there, get tight, and then you round that out, and then you'll have the devil's own time trying to get it out. This originally came with 2 Lovejoys, one here and one here. I got rid of this Lovejoy. It caused me nothing but grief. I mean, it was terrible. I was going through a Hydral spider every 6 to 7 months. I would just ruin them. They would not last. So I switched over to it's called a Quadraflex Sleeve. And that meant I had to go and have another guard made, because the Quadraflex Sleeve is bigger. And because it's all bigger, this is a little more difficult to get out. That's a Quadraflex Sleeve. I will go in the office here and I'll show you a Hydral spider by itself and one of these sleeves. It's all gear. It's all some sort of a rubber plastic compound. And they are really great. This thing can take a lot more torque, and it can afford to be slightly less perfectly square and still work just fine. So what we do, and we have to take this off to get to this grease zerk here. And every time you do, this is your chance to examine this. You want to look for orange dust. If you see orange dust laying around, that means something is out of square and that it's time to figure out what your problem is. Same thing with the Lovejoy. We want to take our measurements in 3 different points across here to make sure that it's square that way. And then we'll usually have to get I usually take my cell phone. I lay it across here and I make sure that these are level and even with each other, so that you're laying completely flat here and completely flat here. And if you're not, that means it's time to shim up either your gear drive, but most likely it's time to shim up your pump. You can kind of see the corner of a couple shims right here. And so I had to go and buy a whole nother set of shims in order to get, once I switch to these Quadraflexes. But once you get that figured out, it's not that bad. It's not that bad to do. So we're going to do a grease. I've already greased these once already, but it's time. I just want to show how it's done. There is a grease vent. Look at that. Can you get the camera down all the way down to there? Here's your vent, and you see that it's got a little plunger. It's spring loaded. That is our tell that we're going to use to determine whether or not we have enough grease in this pump while we grease. So what you do, and it takes less grease than you might think to do it. So we're going to make sure that's clean. We're going to make sure that's clean. And we'll just get right on that zerk. And then you're going to watch that plunger. And as you slowly pressure this up, all you want to see is that plunger just move down. And then you're done. There you go. You saw that? That's it. No more. We're done. If you ever come out here and it looks like some small animal's been crapping right underneath your pump, that's a good sign you're putting in too much grease. Now after you grease it, of course, within a week's time, you're going to get something to come falling out. That's not uncommon. But if you're seeing a lot of grease down here, let that be an indicator that you probably are over greasing, and that's not a good thing. So now this one's done. Let's go over here to this other side. And we're going to do the same thing. Now it depends on your model of end plate here. Some of them have a zerk here at this bearing cap, and others got a zerk down in here. I mean, not a zerk, a grease vent. So you may have 2 grease vents. And if you have 2 grease vents, you grease until one of them moves. That's all, no biggie. There you go, moved. We're done, no more. No more. Then we just wipe down. There's no virtue in leaving things sloppy, greasy, dirty, nasty. Always clean up after yourself. There's no excuse not to do that. That is probably the biggest thing as far as normal everyday or normal routine maintenance is your greasing. I grease in mine every 4 months, so 3 times a year. I grease these. The manual and stuff says they want to grease every 3 months. I found that is too much. And I run these pumps pretty aggressively, and I'm fine. As a matter of fact, I'm better than fine. I have fewer troubles if I only grease these 3 times a year. So that is that.